Can you see the PowerPoint? Anybody? I can't see you, so you might have to shout at me a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can say, Jen.
Yes,
there, Jane.
thank you very much. Right. I think it's recording. Has it come up saying it's recording?
Yeah.
Perfect, thanks. So we're going to do the SEND white paper today. We're going to pick out some of the main points. I'm not going to be able to cover all of it. As anybody that has read it, it's very long. But the first thing I'm going to do is, so what is it? For those of you that haven't had the joy of reading the white paper, it's a consultation document. So it is not yet confirmed that everything that in it is exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be a 12-week consultation. I'm going to say the 18th, so we're pretty close. 18th of May is the close, I believe. I'm not great on dates, so if I've got that wrong, please somebody shout. It's proposing really significant changes to the code of practice. So it's going to make a big difference the way we work and the practice that we have around SEND. It's going to hopefully improve things. It's going to make things more child-centered, we hope. But there's lots of concerns around it. I think any change makes people uncomfortable, makes people a bit worried. One of the things I keep hearing is, don't worry, we haven't got to do anything till 29-30. You know, we've got 3 years, but actually that's not true. There's 3 phases to it, and phase 1 is starting now, this year. And from a point of view of the local authority, we're really working to very tight timescales to get everything up and running and started. So I'll start with your key messages. It's an approach that's needs-led, it's not diagnosis-led. I'm certainly not upset about that. No, those of you who know me, I worry about really early diagnosis. So working in the early years, I think we should be back working on need, not on diagnosis. And the whole approach is around that. It's about reducing bureaucracy. Nobody's going to complain about reducing bureaucracy if that's actually what's happening. And one of your nice soundbite phrases is, you know, accessing the correct level of support at the correct time. It's very focused around settings and their ability to meet the needs of, and this is going to be a phrase that you're going to become very familiar with, commonly occurring SEND needs. Okay. So commonly occurring SEND. And the idea is very much around that schools, post-16s and early years settings are going to have significant improvements around their ability to meet children's needs. Schools and settings are going to have more funding directly paid to them. So those of you in schools, you already know that you've got a notional budget. That notional SEND budget is there for you to use before you need to go for additional funding. Somebody's isn't muted, so I can hear lots of noises. So I don't know if you're not muted, can you just check if you are? So schools and settings are going to be getting some more money paid to them to meet those needs. Now, I'm going to talk more about this in a little bit, but our nurseries are going to get some of that direct funding that isn't child specific. So that's going to happen as well. And there's going to be a less of an EHC focus, apparently. We'll see if this happens, but there should be less EHCs because schools and nurseries are going to be able to meet the needs with all this additional improved focus on their ability to meet the needs. Means more children won't be needing. We'll see. Lots of change of language, and this is going to be quite important for us when we work in. We're going to have a new change of language. So instead of the traditional areas of need, when we talk about SEND, we're going to have these new 5 ones. So it's going to be executive function, motor and physical, sensory, social and emotional, and speech and language. I think that the one that people struggle with the most is possibly executive function. They sort of go, oh, that's a new one. Not heard that one before, but it's all the things around attention, memory, impulse control. So that one when I go in and people go, oh, I think it's ADHD. So that impulse control, planning, sequencing, their ability to organise, to switch between tasks, to be able to wait, and cognitive flexibility, that flexibility of thinking. And then I think the gross motor and fine motor for the physical is fairly obvious. Speech and language, I think it's fairly obvious. Social and emotional is some of the things we would have possibly looked at under SMEH. And then sensory is being separated out from motor and physical, because at the moment that sort of tends to be lumped together. So I quite like that that's separated out. And those are going to be your areas of need. So when we're looking at SEN, we're going to be looking at what their main area of need is rather than a diagnosis. So children with the same diagnosis could have different areas of need, if that makes sense. So you could have a child that's got a diagnosis of autism, but their main area of need is their sensory, or you could have a child with a diagnosis of autism when their main area of need might be around social, emotional, or speech and language. It's rather than looking at diagnosis, it's like looking at the biggest area of need. The other change of language is when we're looking at the graduated approach. So we've got universal, which is what it says on the tin. It's your universal provision for all children. Then the children that first go on to your SEND register, that's going to be classed as targeted, and targeted is very much what you're putting in place. So you as a nursery provision, childminder, whatever you are, when you're putting in anything new or different, they have to go onto the SEND register, and we're going to be calling that targeted provision. Targeted plus is going to be when you're getting some people from outside agencies involved for advice. So it might be calling us in, or speech and language, or the experts at hand, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in a minute. And then the final one is specialists, and that's really the high level support. That's possibly those children that are still going to need EHCs, and that'll be at the highest level of support from the outside agencies. But that's going to be the new language to be using around what level of support the child needs. You're going to be talking about whether they're at which of the 4 levels that they are at. So when we're looking at how we're planning our work, we're going to be looking at that. We're going to be looking at where we come in and what we offer at each level. I mean, as fairness, as an early years team, we work with you at all levels, but there'll be a slightly different offer for children at different levels. New paperwork. So there's going to be a digital inclusion support plan. So everybody across the country will be using. So at the moment, we use our Solihull SEND support plans, and we've worked really hard at making sure that they're effective and they demonstrate the graduated approach. We've had a really high take-up of them. Most of our early years settings use them, and an awful lot of our nurseries use them. An awful lot of our schools across Solihull are using them as well. But there is going to be the new one. So you will be required by law to be using the digital inclusion support plan. There's also going to be a government imposed format for an EHC as well across the whole country. So at the moment, if you're in Birmingham, your EHC looks different than if it's in Solihull, than if it's in Devon or wherever. But the EHCs are going to look the same and work the same across the whole country. And I think that's quite an important part of the changes. So there's lots of things in the consultation that we don't know any detail about yet. So please forgive me. I'm telling you as much detail as I probably know myself. There's going to be a fast track for an EHCP. So for under 5s, there's going to be certain children that meet the criteria of the phrases significant and complex needs. We don't know what that is, but they're going to have a fast track to having an EHC if they need it. We're not sure what that level of need will be. We're not sure what the fast track will be, how fast it will be. But I think it's really interesting that they're recognising that there are certain children coming through that we're asking settings and we're asking parents to jump through hoops of a graduated approach when it's really obvious that some of these children are going to need a higher level of support significantly into the future. So very often it's the children that have got profound and multiple learning difficulties, those children that have really significant medical needs. At the moment, if I tell you anything, it really is speculation, but it's interesting, and I'll keep you informed when we know that there'll be a different early years approach. Funding, that's always an interesting one. There's going to be increase to that notional budget in schools. We'll see. So our schools all get a notional budget, and what we say it's around £6,000 per pupil we send that we expect them to spend on the children before they apply for an EHC. That £6,000 hasn't increased since I've been doing this job, and I'm old, so it's been around for a very long time. So apparently that's going to increase. Early years settings as well are going to be getting, they're going to call it, I think they was call it mainstream inclusion fund. I can't remember what they're calling it at the moment. So they're going to get a type of the inclusion fund that isn't child specific. So at the moment, if you have a child with high level SEN, you follow the graduated approach, you apply, you get some funding for that child, and you are expected to spend that money on that child. What they are doing is at the moment, and it's very close to being you getting your first amount of this, is that they are looking at the size of your school, the levels of deprivation. I can't remember if it's, I think the numbers of 3 to 4 year olds. It's a government issued plan of what it's got to be. We don't make the decisions, we just have to do the calculations, and then you'll be sent some money. That money is to be spent, and here's the phrase again, commonly occurring SEND. So you've got to prove that you're using that money to improve your school, your nurseries, your schools' ability to meet those needs of the commonly occurring SEND. Now, what's commonly occurring in your nursery may be different than it is in another nursery down the road. Most likely when we get the figures, it's around speech and language needs, because they're the most commonly occurring needs. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about what you can spend the money on later on, but you will be getting some quite shortly. And we, as a team, the area SENCo team, will be supporting you on are and aren't allowed to spend that on. They are talking an awful lot, and we don't know much about simplifying funding. So there's lots of different ways you can get extra funding for your children. It's quite complicated. You have to make lots of different applications, and what they're saying is they're going to try and get rid of it, but we don't quite know how yet. That makes sense. There is a national training offer. I happen to know it's already gone out to tender. I happen to know that there are a few companies bidding on this. And what they're going to produce is they're going to produce some training that is very much designed for each area key stage, I believe. So you will be getting an early years specific training package. But the idea is that all staff will have completed some SEND training. And again, as I said, you're going to keep hearing this phrase, the commonly occurring SEND. So the idea is that everybody in your setting will have had some training on how to meet those needs of your children with SEND. And that the idea is that you are upskilling that workforce so that everybody in your setting has an understanding of SEND as part of their sort of compulsory training, if that makes sense. There's a lot of money going into this, an awful lot of money. We don't know what it's going to look like yet. It's a case of waiting to see until the whoever gets the tender to produce this training and what is produced. But we'll keep you informed, obviously, on that one. Back to funding. I think we're just going to keep talking about the fact that the aims of this reform is to improve practice in all of our settings. Now, we've got 99% of our settings are utterly fabulous across Solihull. And I'm genuinely not just saying that. But I do think across the country, and certainly when I go to lots of our West Midlands, there are people out there that aren't as inclusive. And I think the idea is that they're going to be making sure that we are working with our settings to make sure that you are as inclusive as you can be with the right funding. So we're going to talk a little bit about what funding should be spent on. It's whole setting support. It may include freeing up your staff to participate in training is one of the main things we are pushing that you will spend this on. There's Makaton that we do, would very much fit the needs around early years speech and language, but it could also be around looking at your curriculum, improving interventions. It's embedding good practice, I think, is the best thing. So there's lots and lots of talk around these, and we still don't really know much more about this. There's going to be 7 SEND packages. So this may change. Remember, it's a consultation, but at the moment, the plan says there's going to be 7 packages, and these packages are going to be designed and they're going to be evidence-based, and they're going to be these are the things, if you've got a child with SEND in your setting with these needs, this is what we recommend you do. So when we were looking into it, there was an awful lot of talk around Nelly about it being one of the early years speech and language approaches. And if anybody's ever used that, we know it's a very intensive approach. I can't tell you too much more about these 7 packages, but shall we just say, from what I'm reading and understanding, it's going to be quite directive about what you should be doing with your child's needs. When you've got a child, they're going to be going, has this child got executive function needs? Here's some packages, some approaches that we have decided we know work. And so they're going to expect you to use your funding and your time to train your staff up to do the things that's part of these packages. I know what I'm saying to you sounds quite loose, but it still is at that stage. It's still quite loose. We're still not quite sure. So there's going to be lots of different evidence-based approaches. I'm just going to have to leave it at that. We'll wait and see what they turn out to be. So it might be quite a lot of training involved from us as a team to make sure that you've got that knowledge and skill based to use whatever they're recommending. So legal protections, that's always a difficult one. And this has been one of the biggest things around when I'm listening to lots of these white paper reports. There's quite a few concerns around the changes for the parents. So there will be a legal requirement to write an ISP for all your children on your SEND register. So if you have a child on your SEND register and you haven't written a plan, then actually you will, for the first time ever, be breaking the law. Now we come in and nag you and go, have you done your SEND support plan? Have you done your SEND support plans? Actually, in the future, if you haven't got an inclusion support plan, which is going to be the same sort of thing, you'll be breaking the law. So we will be coming in and saying, please make sure you've done it. EHCs are going to have slightly different legal protections, which is what parents are quite upset about and worried about. You can still go to tribunal if you're not happy with the outcome of an EHC, but there's going to be some slight changes to the law around that. So at the moment, a tribunal can say, I agree with the parent, this is the school you should be they should be paying for your child to go to. Now they can't. They can say, this is the type of school your child needs. So it might be that a tribunal will say, your child needs a social and emotional and mental health setting, or your child needs a severe learning difficulty setting, but they can't say, but they actually need, I don't know, Reynolds Cross. And so the LA's got to pay for them to go to Reynolds Cross. They just say a severe learning difficulty school. I don't know the major implications of that, but at the moment, if a tribunal says that they need to pay for a school, they have to pay for that school, whatever it costs. The other difference is, in the past, it's only whether that setting can meet the child's needs that's got to be considered. They weren't allowed to consider budget. In the future, the local authority is able to choose a setting, choose a school for a child on the grounds that it has got to reach a value for money. And if the cost of it impacts on other children, means there's less for other children available, that would be a reason to say no. So some of these schools that are costing thousands and thousands and thousands a week, they may be able to say, actually, that's impacting on less money for all the other children in the local authority. It's not value for money, so we do not have to pay for your child to go there. I don't think they're talking about removing any children from a setting that they're already in. But there's quite a bit of concern about that. Inclusion support bases. So this is really strong in the white paper, that there will be in all secondary schools and most primary schools an inclusion support base. So there's been lots of conversation about what that is going to be. There's two types talked about in the white paper. There's one that's the local authority one, which is very much like at the moment our ARPs, our additionally resource provisions. So we've got in Solihull, we've got speech and language ARP, and we've got a couple of autism ARPs. And they're run by the local authority, and you need an EHC to go to them. Those ones are still going to be there. There's going to be inclusion support bases rather than ARPs, but there's still going to be those, and there's going to be more of them. So instead of going all our children with EHCs going off to special schools, more of them will be in a local school inclusion support base. And those ones, the children may spend a significant amount of their time in the base, because they are children that will have been designated to go there by the local authority. Now, the other sort are going to be the sort that are run by the school, so they're inclusion bases. And those of you who've been around for quite a long time, they're going to be like I don't know, we call them hubs or rainbow rooms or nurture places, or all the different things we've had over the years, where they are rooms that the children we send can access but not spend all their time in. So it might be where you take children out to do additional interventions, therapies, support, but it's basically a send hub within the school that means that some of the children can access it some of the time. There could be, what they're talking about is getting groups of local schools together and having specialisms. So almost like the school down the road they're more of a specialism with SMEH, and the other school up the road might be more of speech and language specialists. We don't know. There's lots of talk around that. And if they are, and it might be that children spend time in other hubs. Again, doing lots of speculation. So we're looking at lots of work around this. Importantly, it says nothing in any of the guidance around these being in PVI settings. But I am saying we are looking at it, because lots of other, I'm talking to lots of the local authorities about what's happening, and some other local authorities and even some in Solihull are having some conversations. So we're looking at, as a team, to try and produce some guidance on what these should be. The most important and key thing, these are not somewhere where children go as a separate classroom all of the time. Unless your child has an EHC saying that they need to be out of mainstream, they should be spending the majority of their time in mainstream. So that's really important. The hubs are not separate classrooms, separate rooms. We'll see how that goes. Right, so the other big key point in the white paper is experts at hand. So um, there's a lot of people that don't like the phrase expert at hands, and I would agree. There's lots of experts out there. I'm probably talking to lots of experts as I'm speaking at the moment. And the thought that these are the only experts doesn't sound good. But let's go with that label, experts at hand. So the experts at hand from the white paper are going to be additional experts to work directly with settings. Okay, these will be speech and language therapists, OTs, educational psychology, again, possibly some others. There's going to be a model where the special schools in Solihull are going to be doing outreach. This is very hot off the press. So they've been given some funding to employ additional staff. And if you've got children that are really significant and might qualify for the need to go to a special school, the idea is that they come out and do a package of work with you to support you on meeting the needs of that child in your setting. The idea is that they are to upskill you as a setting. So again, it's not a speech and language therapist to come and look at a child, do a report, write what this child needs, to give you some written evidence towards an EHC. It's a speech and language therapist coming out to your setting to train your staff to meet the needs of a range of children with commonly occurring SEND. Again, it's around them having that upskilling approach, and the same with educational psychology. So at the moment, our educational psychologists are working with quite a few of our settings around upskilling around social, emotional and mental health. They're going to be looking at continuing that work and possibly some additional work, but we're going to try and get more of you engaged with that, so that again, social, emotional and mental health needs are really very much a commonly occurring SEND need. So the idea is that these experts at hands are going to be coming into you and supporting you and your staff. So, and hopefully the funding that we've already talked about, the new SEND funding, is going to enable you to release staff, to pay staff to have some of this training or spend some of the time with the experts at hand. We don't know, strangely again, they haven't told us how much PVI settings will be getting. We know that the average primary school, whatever that looks like, will be getting something like 40 hours for an average primary school. We'll see what it looks like in a PVI. Best Start inclusion practitioners. I'm sure a few of you will have heard around this. This is not necessarily the white paper, it's the Best Start in Life. And there's going to be some Best Start inclusion practitioners in every family hub, so at least 4 in Solihull. We are in negotiation exactly what their job is going to be at the moment. If you look at their job description that the government has issued, it's all things to all people. We are, as in Solihull, very keen that it should be around family support. There is definitely a gap for the families of the children that are got high level SEND but are in a nursery, because as an area SENCo model, we don't support families. When they're not in a nursery, they have the fabulous ISPs that go out and they support the families. So we know there's a gap for some of those families about navigating that SEND system. And the idea is that that's what their role will be. So I'm hoping that as settings, you'll be able to refer families to them, these new 4 people, and we will certainly be doing referrals to them for families that need that additional support around their children's SEND needs. But they're also hoping to join us running things like stay in plays for children with SEND, and lots of parent training around additional SEND needs. So they'll be looking at, again, we're looking at doing some training around with parents around social, emotional and mental health, but hopefully they'll be joining us and running that with us. And this is a good time to mention it, there will be some discussion around them doing some supporting for transition, and that's the cue for me to remember to say to all of you, and I'll say it again at the end, we've got our North and South transition events coming up soon. So if I haven't said this at the end, I'm saying it now while I remember, that please can as many of you as possible come to our transition event so that you can make sure we do a really good transition. We've got a north one, which is at the Smithswood Primary School, and we've got a south one, which is at the Lakers Centre on Solihull School campus. But I'm going to try and give you the dates at the end when I remember them. Unless, Julia, you can suddenly remember them and shout them out now.
The north is... Oh, go on, Julia.
Go on, you do the north, Kelly.
The north's the 1st of June, 1:30 till 3:30.
Fabulous.
Yeah. And the south is the 11th of June, 1 o'clock till 3 o'clock.
And we'll provide biscuits and drinks, so please come. Right, anyway, that was my cue to remember. Before I came in, I said I've got to remember to remind you of doing that, and since it said transition. But we're hoping that next year's transition events are going to be in the hubs, and that this Best Start inclusion practitioner is very much going to be involved. Okay, right. We have lots of concerns raised with us around using funding. So I've pretty much stopped toured through the white paper and the Best Start in Life, but just want to add this next little bit on the end to make sure that we're all on the same page around funding. We get lots and lots of questions of funding. I agree with what the white paper is saying. Set funding in the early years is really complicated, and I'm really hoping that they do deliver on this, that they do improve the funding. They give you more, because you all do a fabulous job doing all that you can with probably, well, definitely not enough funding. But also it's so complicated about what you get and where you get it from, and so many of my settings say to me things like, I just haven't got the capacity to fill the forms in to request it. So I'm just going to do a little whistle-stop tour around what we should be spending the funding on, because I think that is causing a bit of confusion. So inclusion fund is okay. That's an easy-ish one. It is, you apply for it for an individual child. So that money must be spent on that child. It is really important, especially because you've sent your SEND plans in as your evidence, that the things you are spending it on is what you've written in your inclusion support plan. So what you can't do is go, this child has got really high level speech and language needs, and what we're having to do is we're having to put in lots of extra support around the child's speech and language needs, and then when you get the funding, you buy some Peppa Pig toys because the kid likes Peppa Pig toys. Unless you can evidence that that's going to get the kid speaking and it's part of your strategies on your SEND support plan, you shouldn't be spending the money on it. The money is to support what you've evidenced in your plans. So I think that's the key one. You can't be spending it on something else just because. And if you're saying the child in the plan needs support, one-to-one support for, I don't know, PE, really you should probably be spending it on the one-to-one support for PE, if that makes sense. You can't then go, oh, I've got all this inclusion funding, I've evidenced this child needs these things, but now I'm going to buy, I don't know, some dressing up clothes. Unless you can evidence that is for that particular child and it's around meeting a child's SEND needs. So, but I think that one, most people are pretty good with that one. That's the coming soon. So in the near future, it's going to be over £1,000, dependent on a few factors. It's important that this is spent in an appropriate way. We are going to be having to come in and ask you how you spent it. So this is going to be the commonly occurring SEND. There are, we are really suggesting that if you want to evidence that you've improved your overall ability to meet the needs of children with SEND, training is probably the easiest way of spending it the first year round. So we're quite happy to do some training. If you've got specific training you want, we can do free training. We can come in. We're not going to charge you. You're not going to have to spend that money on us, but you might have to pay your staff to be out of, ratio out of setting to to have that training, to stop behind, to do an evening training. But there's also, our Makaton Anthony's on. He'll tell you he does an awful lot of Makaton training. There's the Dingleys, if you get it started before June, so you've got very little time left to do that if you want to do that. But there's also loads of other SEND training out there. But that's what that money's got to be spent on. And again, you can't spend that on, I don't know. You could spend it on, as long as buying a program and training yourselves up to use a program. So I'm not suggesting Nelly, but something like Nelly, you could buy that and use that to increase your staff's capacity to meet needs, if that makes sense. Daff. So if a parent is receiving disability living allowance, you can get a disability access fund. It's a one-off payment, and again, it needs to be spent on an individual child. You can buy specialist equipment, you can buy something the child needs, but it's got to be around that particular supporting that particular child. EHC funding, this is the one that we people really struggle with. I get loads of people that say, I've got an EHC now, we've bought some stuff for the sensory room, and I go, so does it say in section F that the child needs to have access to a sensory room? And they go, no. And I said, well, why are you spending the money on that? So you cannot just choose what you spend that money on. It has to be exactly what is written into section F of the EHC. So if in section F it says a child needs something, by law you've got to do it. So again, sometimes I go into settings and they're saying, oh, we can't manage Fred at the moment, things are really bad. And I say, where's his one-to-one? They go, oh, we haven't got any, we couldn't appoint anybody, or we haven't got any enough money to appoint somebody, or they're off sick. And I said, but the law says that he has to have one-to-one, because if it's in an EHC, it's the law, it's not optional. So if an EHC says something like you need to, and this happens in lots of Birmingham EHCs, you need to pay for speech and language therapists, it's your job as a PVI setting to source a private speech and language therapist and to pay for it and to ensure it's happening. You can't pick and choose which parts of section F that you do or when you do it, and you definitely can't spend that money on anything that's not mentioned in section F. So that's really, really important. And I think as the number of EHCs are happening more, there's more and more of them in early years, I think it's getting more and more noticeable that a lot of my early years settings see the money come in and think that, and genuinely nobody's spending it on, I don't know, staff outings. I'm not suggesting that anybody's doing anything awful with it. They're spending it on the children, but they're spending it on things that aren't in the EHC section F, and that's again against the law. So even if you're spending it on something specific for that child, it's really important you only spend it on section F strategies. And again, if you think the child needs something different, you can do an EHC review and ask somebody else to help you get that changed. Wow, I feel like I've whizzed through that one. And I don't know, because I haven't been able to see anybody, if there's been any questions. So I'm going to come off. I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, you're all still there. I always hate that when I'm talking to a blank screen and I can't actually see anybody. I am sorry. I do feel I did warn you at the beginning. That was just going to be me talking at you. Is there anybody that's has read the white paper and feel I've missed something key? Because I've definitely missed things from it. No one feels brave. Somebody's just asked me to send the PowerPoint. I'll do my absolute best. If you put your actually what I'll do is I'll get their SENCo to send it to all their settings. Is that fair? That's an easy way of doing it, because otherwise I'm going to have to get you to give me all your oh, there you go. So, Julie's reminded me that she'll put it onto the web page. The recording will go on the web page anyway, so this this recording goes on to our SoulGrid page as soon as we can get it up. We have to do a little bit of IT magic to convert it so it will go on, or should I say Julia has to do a bit of IT magic. Do you want me to stop recording? Because often people don't like to speak until I stop recording, so I'll do that now. Oops.
Jane, I can put the PowerPoint on the web
Brilliant.
page as well alongside the recording.
Right, I've stopped recording.